Welcome to the Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The series is designed to bring interesting topics and people to our global community of students, alumni, and leaders in business and government to empower, educate, and inspire. Forward Together features experts from industry with the purpose to spark thought, connect people, and stimulate engaging discussions. Please submit your questions in the chat. We will hold a Q&A immediately following the presentation.
A very, very good afternoon from Thousand Oaks, California. My name is Gerhard Apfelthaler. I am the Dean of the School of Management at California Lutheran University. I'm really excited about today's Forward Together webinar, not only because we have somebody who is very, very accomplished in the world of music and entertainment, but also because of his transformative journey. And because he has a lot of things to say about business and how it relates to some of the key principles of music. But I'm also excited because our guest today, Freddie, Ravel, and we have been friends for about 15 years. And you might think it's a little bit of an unusual friendship between a business school dean and an accomplished musician, but we'll get into that. It absolutely makes perfect sense once you hear from Freddie Ravel. So, Freddie, welcome.
Hey, Gerhard. Greetings.
Always good to see you.
Wonderful to see you.
So, Freddie, you're joining us today from your studio in the Valley, so not too far
Yes.
away.
Yes, I'm in the Valley in Los Angeles and coming broadcasting from Calabasas. And great to see and great to be with everyone here at CLU.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. So we have about 45 minutes together, and we want to definitely leave some time for questions by our audience. And I would like to invite our audience today again to post their questions in the Q&A section of the webinar. We'll get to those questions in the last 15 minutes or so of today's webinar. So before we really get into the meat of our conversation today, and I hope we'll hear some examples also
Of
from you.
course.
Want to hear about from your mastery of the keyboard. Um, Tell us a little bit about where Freddie Ravel is coming from. What is your story, right? What was 5-year-old Freddie Ravel thinking about his future? What did you aspire to be, and where did the journey take you?
Okay, I'm going to try to summarize that. So at 5 years old, I was already being kind of immersed in a house full of music, a lot of it from my mother. My mother's from Colombia, South America. And those of you who might know a little bit about Colombia, there's a rhythm there called the cumbia. And it is the major dance of Colombia. And so I grew up in a house filled with cumbia. And my father, on the other side, is Eastern European, Ukrainian, Polish. His background was growing up on, Stravinsky and Bach and Beethoven, classical music. So if you can imagine Beethoven meets the cumbia, that's kind of the house I grew up in. So a lot of Latin rhythms and a lot of classical harmony.
That's an interesting combination. So you grew up with a love for music. Did you start learning to play an instrument at a very young age?
Yeah, actually the first instrument I played was the accordion. Yeah, and a lot of people are surprised when they hear that, but that was my very first instrument. I remember that we were able to get accordion lessons for $3.50 an hour when I got started, and it was it was portable. We didn't have to buy a piano. And the guy who got me on accordion said, "Hey, Freddie, you should start on an accordion," because I told him I wanted to play the organ, because the organ had little drum machines and
Uh-huh.
grooves in the early days, and I love the rhythms. I'm a big rhythm person. But he said, "You're too short to reach the pedals right now because you're only 7. So start on the accordion. When you get taller, you'll reach the pedals, and then you can play the organ." By the time I got taller, I went right to the piano. I skipped the organ completely. But
Okay. Wonderful. And so then the next thing I know, right, is you played with some of the greats in the music industry. Started out with Sergio Mendes, I believe, right? And you played with Santana. You were the musical director for Earth, Wind and Fire. You toured with El Jarreau. Um, the amazing thing is we've been friends for 15 years, but probably when I grew up, I listened to all these recordings. This was my musical tribe, so to speak. And so I might actually have heard you play a long time before I met you in person. So how did you get from learning how to play an instrument here in Los Angeles to that point where you get started with some of the greats in the music industry?
I think, thank you, Gerhard. And I got a feeling that when I was in Austria touring with these guys 25 years back, maybe, you might have been right there, right?
I was there in the
we,
audience.
we were destined to meet anyway, but it had to happen in Thousand Oaks
Right.
for us to actually come together. But I will say this: I think for me, I got very lucky, Gerhard. I learned at a young age what I loved, and I decided, to me, sometimes music, your job picks you rather than you pick your job. And in my case, I feel like music said, here we go. This is your passion. Let's live in the reality of your passion. And so I've always pursued my passion. I always have. And because I love it so much, that's probably what has driven the way I've done the business of it. Because how do you figure out what you can do with music? Music is considered one of the most treacherous, difficult careers you could possibly pursue because it's driven by passion, and passion has a way of blinding you to the realities of the world. And so for me, finding ways where music could really intersect value was something I always wanted to do. So at first, value to me was, well, how do I work with the biggest names that I love? How do I grew up on Carlos Santana. I mean, I had a paper route when I got started. That kind of gives everyone a little clue on the generation I'm from. But I threw newspapers when I got started. I was 8 and 9 years old, making, I don't know, $20 a month throwing newspapers. That was my first entrepreneurial goal, everybody, at the School of Management, was throwing newspapers.
Yeah.
But through that, I was always listening to music on my bike, and I was listening to Santana, and I was listening to Earth, Wind and Fire, and I was listening to the Tower of Power, the artists of my time as a young kid. I couldn't imagine that one day I would actually work with a Madonna or with a Prince or with the Carlos Santana. I just couldn't imagine it back then. But I was listening deeply to that. And I was fascinated by the music, I was fascinated by the rhythms of cha-cha-cha, of salsa music. And I was fascinated by the melodies that you hear in classical music. Mm-hmm. And I began to bridge them together, I'm not sure if everyone can hear this, but, a melody like this. Can you hear that all right, everybody?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Beautiful.
Okay. Mozart.
Yep.
Right from your beautiful country, Gerhard, and Austria. And the thing is I always wanted to take those melodies and bridge them with the Latin influence, right? It was always an interest of mine to bridge cultures. That's another thing. Because I come from a hybrid culture, I was interested in bridging cultures. So I started doing it musically, right? Because originally that was what Mozart originally wrote, known as the Turkish March.
Right.
But if you Latinize it, which is what happened in my house with the cumbia meeting Mozart, or salsa meeting Mozart, it becomes... so on. Different than Mozart, but actually it is Mozart, just with a different interpretation. I started realizing over the course of my life that we, a global community, people that come from all parts of the world, if we can weave our music and our culture, just like we do with, let's say, even food is another aspect of culture, dress is another aspect of culture, and business styles, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way you do business in Austria is really different than, let's say, the way you do business in Hawaii. They're fundamentally different, right? The way you do business in Colombia, South America has a different feel. The way you do it in Brazil has a different feel. However, there are basic tenets of business that are true across all cultures, right? People like to feel that they're being heard. People like to feel that they have some role of leadership. People like to have feel that they have a team that they can collaborate with. In all cultures, right? People like to feel that there is a rhythm, a swing, a pacing of their business and their ideas, right? I've got an idea for a mission statement, but I need to bounce it off my team. I have an idea for a product or a service, but I got to make sure that I can get it done in 2 months because of a deadline. I would associate that with rhythm. So what I'm trying to say is, out of the music and out of a hybrid culture that I grew up in, I began to start to think about entrepreneurs and business.
Well, this is great. I'm hearing, that there's two themes here, right? The one is the passion, and I admire you and I applaud you for sticking with it, for living out your passion, and I envy you a little bit too, right? I love my job, but 5-year-old Gerhard did not dream of becoming a business school dean, right? In California, of all places. I deeply admire people who are able to use their passion to create a lifestyle for themselves, but also to use the same passion to bring something that helps others, right? Whether that's just through the joy of music, or whether it's in your latest steps in your career of bringing the message um, of music to the world of business, right? And that's the other thing that I'm hearing here, the building of bridges between cultures, between music and business. And you've built a fascinating story here around some of the key principles of music and how they apply to business. A message, by the way, that you've delivered to auditoriums of thousands of people at some of the largest companies in the world, right? I remember Apple, Amazon, Google, NASA. You spoke around the world to business people, and the message that you have resonates, right?
I feel very lucky to say yes to that. It does resonate, and I think a lot of it is because every human being on planet Earth is connected to music. Just by virtue of having a heartbeat, we have a drummer inside of us, right? And if you start thinking about your life in a musical frame, you start thinking about, well, how do I harmonize with others? How do I get it? If we talk about rhythm, how do I become in sync with other people?
Right.
And those kinds of messages, the people that are living inside the NASAs, the Apples, the IBMs, right? The Googles, some of the people I've spoken to are in the healthcare industry, right? Blue Cross, Blue Shield, the Peri-Operative Nurses Convention in Nashville, Tennessee, the nurses that are standing side by side, surgeons on life and death decisions. I had the privilege to speak to 6,000 of these amazing nurses that are saving lives every day, right? I was just in Dubai recently speaking to people at the $1 Million Roundtable, which is a group that's focused on finance, and they're focused on financial well-being and insurance, for example. And they were from all over the world, because these are subjects that all of us, all human beings needed. We need insurance. We need health insurance. We need good economic and financial advice. We need to navigate the world. It turns out that music is the oldest language on the planet, and has jewels, treasures inside of it that can help us navigate. But most people are not aware of it. And one of my missions in Life in Tune is to show that music is a universal language that can be used as a way to raise our presence, our listening skills, our leadership, the way we manage time, and the way we work together, Gerhard, the way teams and people work from all sides of life.
You know, I love metaphors and analogies, right? And in the US, of course, everybody uses sports analogies when we talk about business. I think we need to use more music analogies when we talk about business. So let's get to that, right? So as we've talked about this a lot, and I do remember some of the key elements here are you talk about harmony, melody, and rhythm, right? Can you walk us through how these key elements of music relate to business?
Sure. Absolutely. To all the participants, everybody watching the webinar right now, just in your mind, if you think about any form of music, anything, music has three elements in it. The majority of music has three elements in it. It has melody, it has harmony, and it has rhythm. And it can be a song. It can be a song as basic as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, right? Or some people call it the ABC, right? Right? Here's how the ABC sound without a melody. We don't know what's going on, do we? We just know that there's some kind of harmony. We don't know that it's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star or ABC until we play. So what's the melody doing? It's leading. It's telling us the identity of the song. And most of us grew up with that when we were 1 or 2 years old. We were exposed to, by the way, everybody, a little secret, Mozart. Mozart wrote that, right? A lot of people don't realize that Mozart wrote the fundamental song that most of us grow up on to learn the English alphabet, right? But it's used in other languages as well, right? Okay, that's the melody. So the melody is the identity of a song. It tells you what it is. It IDs it, right? So I use the melody as a lead piece. The melody leads the music. Therefore, melody is leadership. Now, harmony, you'll notice that I'm playing multiple notes. I'm not just playing one note, I'm playing a series of chords. These are 3 notes at a time. By doing that, I'm doing something that is collaborative. These notes are collaborating together to create a C chord, or a C chord with an E in the bass, or an F major chord. But those chords, you cannot create a chord without multiple notes collaborating together. And they have to collaborate harmonically. Because if they don't, it would sound like this. That's not collaboration. They're fighting each other.
I think I know organizations like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, how many of us know organizations where, well, we have a pretty good team. Some people don't show up on time. And some people do show up on time, but we're out of sync. But when they do show up on time, we have a team. And then we have a leader who shows up. But the only thing we left out, everybody, is the third element, rhythm. Rhythm is actually telling me the tempo and the timing and the pacing of all of this. If I didn't have rhythm in my brain and I was just playing it, it might sound like this. Oh, the leader is not even with us. The team is moving, but the team's kind of stuttering, right? if the team is stuttering and the leader is out to lunch and doesn't return phone calls or went off on a trip to Fiji and people wonder why the company's failing, well, the melody is not aligned with the harmony, right? But if we have it aligned, right? And in my brain, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have a commitment to timing. I am at approximately, I'm not exactly sure, I'm going to say this is about 80 beats per minute right now. And I'm lining my tempo up with that. And that's like in a business saying, you know what, everybody, we have 10 weeks to get this product done. And if we move at 8 hours a day, everybody devoted, and we have a meeting every Monday to show our progress, and we have a whiteboard to look at where we're going, a map, if you will, we will reach that goal. But if we're not moving at a certain rhythm, we will not get there. So rhythm is what guides us to land. And now we get to the fourth element, right? The first three are melody, harmony, and rhythm. But when we get to the fourth element, when the whole piece comes together, that's called the score. And the score is the manifestation. And by the way, when the score is really good, it might become... the whole thing with variations and modifications, and we've added a couple of features to our products and services. And we've decided to deliver you a special gift at the end because we love your loyalty with our customer loyalty program.
Isn't it amazing that all of us, whether we are skilled in music or not, we can immediately hear where the dissonance is, right? When harmony, melody, rhythm don't align. Why is it so hard to recognize that in business? Or what can music do to help leaders to better align their organizations?
What a great question. And the answer is it should be an easy answer. The easy answer involves respect. You know, if you're with your colleagues and you might make a judgment, you know, Susie's been here for 2 weeks and I don't know if she gets it. People make an opinion of somebody, right? Well, what if Susie is more introverted than John, who's more extroverted? And what if Susie's a deeper thinker and takes a little bit more time before she says anything? But when she says something, her idea is so powerful that it makes the whole team shift 2 degrees, and it gets them to their destination faster because she thought about it, right? I mean, how many people on this call can think of a Susie in their life that does that, right? You know, I think a lot of it has to do with respect. The other one is listening skills. We tend to be really, human beings, 50% of what is said when we say something to one another is forgotten in the first minute. We speak at about 150 words a minute, but our minds move at 600 to 1,000 words a minute. So you say something to somebody, and their minds have raced way ahead of you onto something entirely different. It's an astonishing thing. We are not present for each other. We're too busy, you know, thinking about crazy stuff, you know, the stock market, or what time do I have to pick up my kid from school? It's important to know what time you have to pick up your kids to school, but you shouldn't be thinking about that when you're in a room, in a boardroom, trying to advance the business of everybody. You need to be present. So presence and being 100% focused on the goal when you're with your team is a keystone to the management of business. Now in music, you cannot be missing the beat. If I'm playing with Carlos Santana and he's taking a solo and he looks at me a certain way, I have to read his signals.
Mhm.
musically, audio, visually, and I have to adjust immediately to
Right.
what he's telling me to do. Can you imagine a great business having the leader cues everybody non-verbally and they all move with him or her? What kind of business that would be? That would be a business that is agile. All right? That's a big word in the world of business. Agility. Can you be agile? Can you deal with disruption? Can you deal with change? Do you have any form of resilience in your organization? Now we can get into improvisation. That's a whole other topic. But
Right.
can you come up with new things on the fly? How do you innovate? That's a whole other topic, but that is around business,
Mhm.
especially now, right, Gerhard? And here we are in the middle of 2025, right? The world seems to be going through the world is going through tectonic shifts, right? So
Right.
why not use the world's oldest language? Why not use music? The oldest language on planet Earth. You know, we've only been using the spoken word for about 5,000 years. The written and spoken word's about 5,000 years, give or take a few hundred here and there. But music, in fact, Gerhard, close to where you were born, in Germany, they found a flute in a cave made from a vulture's bone. It's a flute. It's 40,000 years old.
That's fascinating.
Right? So next door to Austria, here it is, a vulture's bone to play scales on, right? We've been using music for tens and tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
So why not use it as a tool to help us in our daily business?
Absolutely. So how do you do that as a leader, right? How do you use the key elements of music to become a better listener, to address the dissonance that you sometimes have in your organization? And by the way, let me also remind the audience, please post your questions in the Q&A. We'll get to those in just a few minutes.
Yeah, beautiful. So how do you do in dissonance? You have to think about resolution, right? Dissonance is another way to think about dissonance. Everybody here, let me try to explain this musically. Back to the keyboard, right? This is consonant. It's pleasing. It's harmonious. It's a straight up C major triad. Dissonance would be if I took my fist and I went. That's dissonant. Dissonant, right? When this hits you in life, and by the way, everybody, let's be honest, this will hit you at least several times a day. Unexpected email comes in. The job you're trying to get doesn't come true. The internship you're working on, they're going to go with someone else. They decided not to go with you. The grant that you thought was going to happen doesn't come in. There's something at home. Your dog is not doing well. Somebody's sick. There's always something that causes this. What you have to, there's thousands of ways to treat this, but when something like this happens, sour, you have to realize that in this cluster of problems, I'm using the problems in quotes, you might not have to remove the whole thing. You might just remove the fight is here. So you have to, if this is a problem, you just take out, park that problem to the side for a moment and hear what's remaining. What's remaining is this. That's not so bad. I can live with that. This, that's hard. Let me take that one problem and park it. Pull it out of the equation. And you hear this and you go, I feel pretty good. I've got some blessings to count. I have a way to feel better. I'll deal with this. Maybe I'll move it down a half step. From here to here. That's tolerable, and maybe I'll resolve it. it's a metaphor.
Mhm.
And in music, the resolution sometimes is just a half step away.
That's actually a beautiful message, right? So sometimes the dissonance seems like it's this big, complex problem that is so hard to address and that is impossible really to resolve. But maybe you're just half step away from the solution, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect, Gerhard. That's exactly right. Actually, I do feel that resolutions are not, so we tend to dramatize our challenges. We tend to feel overwhelmed by challenges. And many times it's you have to kind of remove the noise. That's kind of what I was showing. Get away, find the things that find your base, your friends, your family. You have usually we have some people in our corner that support us. Those are this. That's your foundation. This one, this unexpected thing. Maybe it's a gift. Maybe the challenge needs to resolve a little bit, and then it finally gets to this with patience and execution and persistence, right?
Right.
So these are the ways you can think about challenges.
So what I'm hearing here is, right, so if you're facing a really difficult situation in a business environment, of course you always need to know what your bigger picture is, what your why is, where you're going. But sometimes keeping the larger vision in mind, it's better not just to try to boil the ocean and tear it all down, but to just take the little steps, right? And also have the little wins on the way to the larger vision.
The little wins along the way. Beautiful. Yeah, Gerhard, it's exactly what I'm. Thank you for, putting that business language inside of it, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah. So you've created a whole concept out of your learnings from music and how you apply it to business, but you also apply it to life, right? In general, it's not just about business; it's about how to live a life in tune, as you say, right?
It is, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. For the longest time, I used to call this the music of business, or because everyone used to call it the business of music is more about music, but the music of business is what I started calling it. And I realized, to your point, that this was not just business. This was actually life tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm a father. I've got a wonderful daughter, and I have a wonderful son. And I use these principles too when I wear the dad hat. I do the same with that. I have a beautiful lady in my life. I use the same principles to nurture the relationship. Life in tune for me is personal as well as business.
Yeah. So you've spoken to some of the largest corporations in the world. Um, what do you feel is the response to your message? Do you feel that it resonates with them? Another word from your world of music, right? Does it resonate with your audience? Do you feel that there is change coming from your message in those corporations?
Very much so. I mean, a case in point is the $1 Million Roundtable. I presented to them in Austin 6 years ago for their regional conference, and they benefited. They got it so deeply that they invited me to do the national conference in Nashville. That went so well. That was 3 years later. That went so well that the following year, last year, they invited me to go to Dubai and do their international conference. And in this case, it was for 5,000 people. So they got it, and they realized that the tools are beneficial for people who are selling insurance and selling financial packages.
Yeah.
You know, when you're doing that, you're guiding people through the decisions of, well, should I save money for my kids' schooling and their education? Should I save money for retirement? You're giving people advice on how they're going to live their life and make their nest egg for the future. And they realize that the lessons of life in tune were very valuable for them.
And as a musician, you obviously not only read your fellow musicians up on the stage, but you also read the audience, right? So when you are speaking at a corporation, do you feel like there is a change, right? People are shuffling into the auditorium, they're sitting down, not knowing what they should expect, and then are they kind of dancing out of the auditorium? Has their attitude, their mood changed?
I do open it up like a concert. What we do at Life in Tune, and my team and I put together, we call it a keynote concert because it's a keynote and a concert. It's kind of like a TED Talk and a concert simultaneously. And the reason I feel that that's an important module of learning is because when people, we call it edutainment, right? Entertainment and education. When you are able to deliver knowledge in an entertaining way, people learn 5 times faster. 500% increase in retention of ideas because they've enjoyed the journey, And I think when people go to concerts and they go to hear music, it's pleasurable, it's beautiful, it's a rich experience. If you can throw in tools for learning and tools for becoming a better entrepreneur, well, bonus, it enriches the journey.
It's interesting. It seems almost like music isn't getting the credit it deserves, right? We often say an image is worth more than 1,000 words. Maybe music is worth 10,000 words.
I think so. I like to say music's the great invitation for mankind to transcend spoken word, to enhance how we think and put into sync so we hear what is mostly not heard.
Beautiful. Even rhyme.
It
Yeah.
even rhymes. Yeah. Because if you can hear what is mostly not heard, think of that. Think about that. You are walking into your business, you're walking into a meeting, you're walking into a relationship where you have kind of a heightened sense of radar, a heightened sense of sensitivity and perception. And when you're coming in with integrity and honesty and you're listening for what's the question behind the statement is one of the tools I talk about. Listen for the question behind the statement. If you listen with that curiosity, you will innovate. You'll come up with ideas. You will challenge your colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Throughout our conversation, one person that kept popping into my mind was Warren Buffett. So he's not necessarily a leader of one of the largest companies in the world, but definitely one of the most celebrated investors with an immense understanding of how the business world works. And I think he once said he's tap dancing to work every day, right?
Isn't that beautiful?
Do you think he incorporates that alignment of harmony, melody, and rhythm into the perfect score?
I think he does. God, what I would do to just have the privilege to meet him and share this with him, because I think he intuitively does this. There is Warren Buffett talks a lot about one of the most important things that will double your value. I'm paraphrasing him. I don't have the exact quote, but what doubles your value is your communication skills. So if anybody out there, Google Warren Buffett, type in communication skills, and he talks about doubling your effectiveness in everything by honing in on communication skills.
So a leader communicates, he's in charge of the melody, right? So he communicates the vision. Does he do more? Is he also the conductor of the orchestra that is a company?
He is. He or she is the conductor too. You see, if you're a conductor, melody, harmony, and rhythm are part of your entire vocabulary. You're thinking about the score as well, which is the results. The goal of your product or service is the score. But you're also listening to everybody. What does a conductor do? They stand in front of an orchestra. They start moving their hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. That's rhythm. I'm going to quote Mozart again. Melody. Dun, 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 dun. right? Dun, 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 dun. Melody, rhythm. Then the whole orchestra comes in with harmony, right? And when they get to the end of it, this glorious ending, they get to the score. But there's going to be times where there's some dissonance in the music, and that'll give tension, but the tension will give you resolution. And every good story has some tension and resolution. Mm-hmm. Every good song has something tense in it and has resolution in it. And guess what? Every business, everybody who's successful in business will say, man, 3 steps backwards, 1 step forward. 2 steps backward, and finally on the 4th year, 5 steps forward. And then the following year, we had to take 2 steps backward. It's always like that. Mm-hmm. We always hit. It's never this perfect line of success. It's success and then a little valley, success and a valley, sometimes a huge valley. Then it comes back up.
And I guess you have that in music as well, right? That there are certain moments when you perform where everything just comes together in a beautiful moment that is much different from other moments in the performance. But generally, I want to say musicians, band leaders, conductors probably don't have a lot of tolerance for things not aligning, harmony, melody, and rhythm not aligning. Business leaders sometimes do, right? Why is that? Are they not hearing what's coming from their organization? Are they not listening? Should they be listening, right? Are they tolerating the dissonance for too long so that things are getting derailed completely?
Yeah, if you're sitting in an echo chamber of dissonance, right? You know, the first day you're hearing, the next day, man, the market sucks today. The supply chain is bad. We're not getting those shipments from Thailand. All that stuff. And if you're kind of like, I don't know what's going on, and you don't stop, time out, and ask the people in your team, can you give me some insights on that? And if you can't, can you do the research so we get an answer? Mm-hmm. And get back to me in 1 hour, because I'm not going to wait a whole day for the ship to sink, right? Yeah. I think timeliness is very important. You have to be timely. That's rhythm.
Right.
You have to rhythm.
Yeah.
You can't, you don't want to stay in an unsustainable situation. Mm-hmm. So if you're not listening, your business will die very, very clearly.
So listen and take corrective action. Don't let things linger, because that's not going to lead to the perfect score, right?
Yeah. And by the way, understand that there will be times where the melody may take a break and the harmony needs to drive it. That means the team has to work. The leader has to step away for a minute and let the harmony, like a beehive, let the bees make some honey. We're not ready to ship the honey. We got to make it, right? So understand that it's not this perfect melody, harmony, rhythm, score. It's not perfect. It's a dance,
Beautiful.
And I'm going to sneeze. That's a truism. When you sneeze, there's the truth, right? Melody, harmony, and rhythm are a dance. There are times where there's a drum solo, right? You go to a concert, there's a drum solo. There's no melody during the drum solo. There's no harmony, but you get down into the dance.
And it's still great.
The rhythm of it.
Yep.
And then because you got in there, the harmony comes back and you're like, oh, it's so rewarding to hear the harmony come back.
Yep.
We're human beings. We're emotional. We want to hear the dance. We want to hear the journey.
Wonderful. Freddie, I can't believe that we're already at the end of our time today. As you know, we've had so many hour-long conversations. I could talk to you all day about music and listen to your music. And talking about that, do you have any shows coming up in the near future?
Well, I do. I have a show coming up in Los Angeles at a place called Vibrato. And Vibrato is a beautiful place up in Bel Air. and it's a well-known club. So Vibrato on the 25th of May. It's a Sunday. So it's coming up. It's like 4 weeks from this Sunday.
Wonderful. I would recommend to everybody, if you have a chance, please go and see Freddie Ravel. It's a fun night. It's music at its perfection. And you will probably also get the chance to meet Freddie, who loves his audience, right? He's not just that person up on the stage. I always see him walking around, and you might catch him there and be able to talk to him. Freddie, thank you so much for being with us today. Some really valuable lessons in here. And I also want to remind everybody that we have a few more events coming up at the School of Management towards the end of this current academic year. The New Venture Fair on May 7th. Please join us for that. We have, I believe, 66 startup teams competing over prizes on campus here in Thousand Oaks. And then also we have our graduation banquet on May 14th. At 6 p.m. You can find the information and registration information on our website. Would be great to see you in person there. And for today, I just thank you for joining us, and I thank Freddie again for being with us. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks for the insight.
Thank you, Gerhard.
Thank you.
See you all soon.